Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're not just crossing continents, but we're embarking on quite an extraordinary journey back through time.
Way back.
Yeah, way back to the very dawn of human civilization. Picture a landscape where the first cities, rose from these fertile plains, where complex laws were first etched into stone, and where the revolutionary act of writing, well, it transformed human communication forever.
It's a journey into Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. And what's truly captivating here, I think, is that we're not merely sifting through dusty ruins.
No, not at all.
We're exploring these vibrant, innovative hubs that really laid the groundwork for so much of what we consider foundational in our modern world.
Exactly. From how we organize our societies to, the stories we tell.
It's remarkable to consider that the very concept of urban living, of a society organized enough to build grand temples, manage vast economies, devise intricate legal systems, it really began here.
There's definitely an inherent mystery, a profound fascination with these ancient metropolises. So as we delved into these forgotten cultures, unearthed by diligent scholars,
Right.
what profound lessons can they still teach us about ourselves and the societies we build today? That's the big question, isn't it?
And to truly appreciate these lessons, we need to understand how we came to know about them in the first place. Our guide for this particular deep dive is a remarkable individual, Percy S.P. Hancock,
Percy S.P. Hancock,
and his pivotal work, Mesopotamian Archaeology, which came out in 1912.
1912. Okay, that specific year is a crucial detail for our discussion, isn't it? What makes Hancock's book from that particular moment such a unique lens?
That's an excellent point. His book offers this really singular snapshot of Mesopotamian studies at, well, a pivotal moment in history.
Right after the first big discovery.
Exactly. It came right after the pioneers in the field of excavation and research had just begun to pull back the sands of time, revealing these incredible secrets. Hancock's work, I understand, was even spurred by a suggestion from Dr. Wallace Budge.
Oh, Wallace Budge of the British Museum.
The very same. Budge encouraged Hancock's endeavor to give a brief account of the civilization of ancient Babylonia and Assyria in the light of this new material.
So he was synthesizing the cutting edge for his time.
Pretty much. So our mission today is to explore Mesopotamia through Hancock's early 20th century perspective, understand what was known and even speculated about over a century ago.
And see how that early knowledge laid the indispensable groundwork for our understanding of these incredible civilizations today.
Precisely. It's about seeing the foundations of the field itself.
Okay, so let's begin by unpacking the land itself.
Yeah.
Mesopotamia, a name that literally means land between the rivers. It was profoundly shaped by its geography.
Absolutely fundamental.
Hancock describes this Mesopotamian valley as being divided into two distinct halves. You've got the northern half, primarily the domain of the Assyrians, and the southern half, home to the Babylonians. This division, he noted, was roughly marked by a line just above Abu Haba, ancient Sippar.
And a crucial element here is the absolute imperative of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These weren't just waterways. They were the very lifeblood of these civilizations.
Both flowing into the Persian Gulf.
Right. And Hancock observed something fascinating, that the land itself emerged and were yearly emerging out of the sea.
Wow, like it was still being formed.
Exactly, a dynamic phenomenon he compared to Lower Egypt. Imagine land literally forming and reforming beneath your feet, shaped by the power of these two great rivers.
That's a powerful image. New land being born each year.
Yeah.
And these rivers, particularly the Euphrates, were known for their annual inundations. Now, these floods can certainly bring devastation.
Oh, absolutely. Big floods could be catastrophic.
But they also had a crucial life-giving role, didn't they?
They absolutely did. They deposited that mud so essential to the enrichment of the soil, which was vital for agriculture in what was otherwise a largely arid region.
So free fertilizer, basically.
Pretty much. But this natural bounty required immense human ingenuity to harness. The land demanded an elaborate system of irrigation canals.
You couldn't just rely on the flood.
No, you had to manage that water, especially for the dry and thirsty land during the long, hot summers. The Euphrates, with its slower current and lower banks, was sort of more amenable to these systems.
Easier to control.
A bit. While the swifter Tigris, with its higher banks, presented different, more challenging conditions, it's really a testament to their early engineering prowess that these systems were so widespread and effective.
And it wasn't just ancient history. Hancock even noted active efforts in his own time, 1911, 1912.
Yeah, that's right. By Sir John Jackson Limited, to build a dam at the head of the Hindia Canal.
And the goal?
to restore the fertility of the plain. It just demonstrates the timeless importance of water management in this region, even, into the modern era.
It really highlights a core insight: the relentless human effort to adapt to and harness their environment.
Transforming a challenging landscape into a cradle of civilization. Their very existence was dictated by their relationship with these rivers. It's a foundational principle for their entire society.
Okay, so beyond the powerful rivers, this land also offered a rich bounty of flora and fauna. Hancock tells us that while things like acacia, pomegranate, and poplar were present, the undisputed king, the true hero, was the date palm.
Ah, the date palm. You can't talk about Mesopotamia without the date palm. Hancock's sources tell us it was so vital, Babylonians celebrated its 360 benefits in popular song.
360.
And it's no exaggeration. The single plant wasn't just food, it was the ultimate multi-tool for survival and culture.
Right.
Imagine a world where one tree gives you food, building materials, ropes from its fibrous bark.
Ropes from a palm tree.
Yeah, the fibrous bark. And even fermented liquor from its sap. Sugar, too.
Wow.
It was so central that the goddess Nina was given the epithet, who makes the dates grow, in ancient inscriptions. And they've found amphora-shaped vats specifically for date wine.
It perfectly encapsulates Mesopotamian ingenuity, making the most of every single resource.
Absolutely, harnessing their environment.
That's just incredible how versatile one plant could be. And what about the animal kingdom? What did the Mesopotamians live alongside and depict so prominently in their art?
Well, domesticated animals were, as you'd expect, utterly essential. Horses, oxen, sheep, goats, dogs, they're constantly represented in Assyrian art.
Standard farm animals, basically.
Pretty much. Interestingly, Hancock notes the horse was likely domesticated in Mesopotamia earlier than in Egypt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with very early evidence from Nippur even showing a horned animal, maybe an antelope, dragging a plow, that might predate the widespread use of bulls or horses for that specific job.
Huh. And camels. They feel very Middle Eastern.
They do, but they were primarily suited for Babylonia's flat plains. You rarely see them in early art until the Persian period. Hancock notes they were of less use in hilly Assyria because they tend to slip on uneven terrain.
Huh. So even the choice of animal transport and labor was dictated by the specific geography. Clever. And what about the wild animals they encountered?
A mix, really. The ibex, oryx, and deer are often depicted. This perhaps hints at the Sumerians' elusive origins.
How so?
Well, it suggests a possible mountain home given these animals' natural habitat. We'll come back to that. The boar was another significant animal, highly valued for food, even shows up in temple offerings and found on archaic seals.
Yeah?
Rabbits, hares, foxes, bears. They appear, but rarely. Two creatures, though, stand out in their art and real life as both familiar and formidable entities.
Let me guess. Lions.
Lions and serpents. Got it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. These aren't just animals. They're symbols of power and danger.
Indeed. Lions were frequently hunted, sometimes even captured for royal hunts, showing off the king's prowess.
Right, the big game hunter king.
Exactly. And they also appeared in those colossal, winged, human-headed forms, what the Assyrians called Shadi and Lamasi.
The guardians at the palace gates.
Precisely. Serving as guardians at palace entrances. Layard, one of the early excavators, described the Mesopotamian lion as taller and larger than a St. Bernard dog, without the dark and shaggy mane of the African species.
Wow, quite specific.
Yeah. This imagery is powerful, indicative of their perception of strength and protection. And fascinatingly, these colossal figures, the Shadi and Lamasi, sometimes had a fifth leg.
A fifth leg. That's such a curious detail. Why would an artist add an extra limb? What's that about?
Precisely. It sounds weird, but it was an ingenious artistic solution. It was to create an impression of solidity from all angles.
Oh, so from the front it looks like it has two legs standing firm.
Right. And from the side it looks like it has four legs walking. It makes them appear complete and stable whether viewed from the front or the side. A subtle but powerful visual trick.
That is clever. Very clever.
Also notable are creatures like the bison, or Rimu. An animal of mountains and forests, plays a conspicuous part in the epic story of Gilgamesh. And a wonderfully quirky detail Hancock shared: buffaloes, which thrived in the marshes and provided milk and butter, apparently had a peculiar antipathy to the smell of soap.
Buffaloes hating soap. That's a nugget of knowledge you don't forget. Why would they even know that?
Who knows? Maybe someone tried washing one. It's these little details that make the past feel strangely real sometimes.
It really does. Any interesting birds or aquatic life that left their mark?
Birds were less frequently depicted with distinct colors, but eagles were significant, particularly in the Etana legend.
Where the hero tries to fly to heaven.
That's the one, on an eagle's pinions. And later, the eagle becomes a symbol supporting Ashur, the national god of Assyria. Vultures appeared, notably on the famous vulture stele.
Oh, that's quite graphic, isn't it?
Very. Carrying off the limbs of fallen foes, a stark depiction of warfare. Fish, like barbel and carp, were abundant in the marshes, used for food and offerings by rulers like Eannatum.
Makes sense, land between the rivers.
And fittingly, for a land defined by water, the fish god Ea of Eridu, or Oannes to the Greeks. He was often represented as a fish, and was even considered, by some accounts, to be the creator of the world.
A fish creator god. Okay, Mesopotamia, you keep delivering surprises. So from majestic lions to those rather peculiar soap-averse buffaloes, it's clear the Mesopotamian landscape deeply influenced their culture, art, even their beliefs.
Absolutely.
And it's within this uniquely defined environment that a remarkable succession of civilizations rose and fell, each leaving its own indelible mark.
Indeed. Hancock describes how, in the early days of Babylonian history, the country was divided up into a number of small principalities or city-states.
Not one big empire from the start.
No, this fragmented political landscape was actually the crucible for remarkable innovation, setting the stage for everything that followed.
And at the very root of this, we find the Sumerians. Their origins you mentioned are quite enigmatic. What were some of the early theories Hancock explored about where they came from?
Well, Hancock points to fascinating migration theories, suggesting a mountain home for them.
Mountain home. In flat Mesopotamia.
Exactly. The idea is supported by some interesting clues, linguistic ones, for example. Their word for mountain and country was the same.
Suggesting they came from a place where mountains were the country.
Perhaps. Also, the characteristic form of their temple towers, the ziggurats, they're seen as an imitation in bricks and mortar of the hills.
Like they were recreating their homeland.
Maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously. An aversion, perhaps, to the dead-level monotony of the Babylonian plain. Even the earliest depictions of the sun god Shamash show him with one foot resting on a mountain or standing between two mountains. It hints at a deep cultural memory.
So the very shape of their sacred architecture might have been a longing for a homeland. That's a powerful connection. And Hancock also notes their unique language.
He does. The Sumerians spoke an agglutinative language.
Agglutinative. What does that mean exactly?
It means words are formed by joining many individual pieces together, like adding building blocks to create complex meanings, rather than changing the word itself internally like we often do in English.
Okay, got it.
This linguistic structure is quite different from the Semitic languages, like Akkadian or Assyrian, that would follow. And it's thought to be possibly akin to Mongolian or Turkish languages, which further fueled that mountain home migration theory.
Interesting connection.
These Sumerians, wherever they came from, laid the foundation for so much of Mesopotamian civilization, developing intricate agricultural techniques, urban centers, and pioneering forms of writing and governance.
Then the political landscape shifted dramatically with the Akkadian period. This saw the rise of Semitic empires under formidable figures like Sargon and Naram-Sin.
Right, they significantly expanded power and influence across the region, bringing a new artistic climax, especially in depicting the human figure, as we'll see.
Following this, we see the rise and fall of powerful Babylonian dynasties. Notably, the first dynasty of Babylon under Hammurabi,
whose legal code would have such an enduring legacy.
and later the Neo-Babylonian Empire with famous rulers like Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar.
And simultaneously, or sometimes overlapping, the Assyrian Empire flourished under formidable kings like Ashur-nasir-pal.
Known for his grand palace at Nimrud.
Yes, and the renowned Ashur-bani-pal, whose reign marks periods of immense power and artistic achievement, including his famous library.
And the centers of power shifted over time too, didn't they? From Ashur to Kala, which is modern Nimrud.
Right.
Then Nineveh for the Assyrians, and of course Babylon for the Babylonians.
There were periods of distinct dominance. Assyria, for example, subjugated Babylonia for centuries, from Tukulti-Ninib right up to the destruction of Nineveh around 606 BC.
It's a dynamic and often violent history.
Very much so. But each civilization undeniably built on the innovations of its predecessors.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
It demonstrates a recurring pattern in ancient history. This continuous cycle of innovation, conquest, and cultural absorption. Each dominant power set the stage for the next, often inheriting and adapting previous advancements. It proves that even in conflict, knowledge and progress can flow.
Now, how did we come to know all of this? Let's dive into the thrilling stories of early archaeological adventures. The pioneering excavators who quite literally unearthed these past civilizations.
Yeah, this is the adventurous part.
It was a time of dramatic discoveries, often under incredibly challenging conditions.
Indeed. One of the most famous names is Layard, Austin Henry Layard. He began excavating Nimrud, ancient Kala, in 1845.
And found Ashur-nasir-pal's palace.
He did, a truly breathtaking discovery. Later, he worked at Nineveh at the mound called Kuyunjik, and there he found Sennacherib's palace.
Incredible finds.
And Layard was known not just for his finds, but for his incredible feats of logistics, like moving those colossal sculptures.
The winged bulls.
Exactly, with a specially constructed cart pulled by 300 Arabs. They even had to get mulberry wood from the mountains because no local wood was strong enough for the task.
Imagine that scale of operation in the mid-19th century. Just sheer human will and determination. Layard's assistant, Hormuz Drassam, also played a crucial role, didn't he?
He certainly did. Rassam continued the work at Kuyunjik, discovering Ashurbanipal's northern palace and those monumental bronze gates at Balawat. He also identified the site of Sippar.
Wow.
Then there's a rather poignant story of George Smith.
Ah, the Deluge tablet story.
That's him, a self-taught genius who, in a truly blink-and-you'll-miss-its moment working at the British Museum, discovered a fragment of the Babylonian account of the deluge.
Which caused a massive sensation.
Absolutely electrified the world, sparked further expeditions funded by newspapers, but his dedication, even when funds dried up, well, tragically, he succumbed to cholera in 1876 during his third expedition out there.
Oh no, a true pioneer whose life ended too soon. It really reminds you of the immense personal cost of these early breakthroughs.
It does. Meanwhile, on another front, a French excavator, de Sarzec, was busy at Tello, the ancient city of Lagash.
And that site was particularly important for the Sumerians.
Hugely. Hancock notes that Tello provided more material for our study of early Sumerian life and culture than any other city. De Sarzec unearthed the famous vulture stele of Eannatum and numerous dolerite statues of Gudea.
Oh?
The American expeditions also played a crucial role. Figures like Peters, Harper, Haynes, Hilprecht, Banks, they focused on Nippur, starting in 1884.
What did they find at Nippur?
They revealed the great temple of Enlil, its ziggurat, and, very importantly, the business archives of the Murashu sons.
Bankers from the Persian period.
Exactly. Influential brokers and bankers. Their archives give incredible insight into the economy of that later period. The Americans also worked at Vismaya, uncovering evidence of some of the earliest Sumerian civilization.
And the Germans were not to be outdone.
Not at all. Excavations by Koldewey, Andre Meisner, M.L. Meyer, they focused on Babylon, specifically the Khazar Mound.
Nebuchadnezzar's palace.
Yes, and Marduk's temple, Isagilla. Koldewey even noted how rigorous Sennacherib's destruction of Babylon had been centuries earlier, leaving little from before his time.
A destructive layer in the archaeology.
Pretty much. The Germans also worked at Ashur, excavating the Temple of Ashur, the Anu Adad Temple, and revealing impressive burial vaults there.
And we shouldn't forget Loftus.
Right, William Kennett Loftus. He excavated at Warka, ancient Erech, and Abu Sharain, identified as Eridu through inscribed bricks.
So many key players.
These early excavators, despite their sometimes less scientific methods by today's standards, were driven by this immense curiosity and perseverance. They brought to light the material record of these lost civilizations that allowed Hancock to write his book.
So once these intrepid individuals uncovered these sites, the real magic began. The material record, the very artifacts they pulled from the earth, started to tell the story of Mesopotamia. And perhaps nothing speaks more eloquently to their ingenuity than their architecture, especially given their unique building challenges.
Absolutely. The scarcity of traditional building materials like good stone and timber meant they became absolute masters of brick building.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Truly, we find various types of bricks. The early Sumerian plano-convex bricks, for example.
And explain those again. Plano-convex sounds quite technical.
Yeah, it just means flat on one side plano and curved or rounded on the other convex.
Ah, okay.
This early Sumerian style was unique, likely because they were hand-formed without molds, making them easier to lay in thick mud mortar. It distinguishes their early architecture.
And later.
Later, they used flat square bricks, seen under kings like Naram Sin, and even finger-marked bricks. For mortar, they initially used just mud and water.
Which doesn't sound very durable.
It holds up surprisingly well in a dry climate. But bitumen, a natural asphalt, was widely employed, especially for waterproofing.
Bitumen, so like tar.
Exactly. Found naturally in the region. Bernina's storehouse, the Nippur city gate, ziggurat bases all show evidence of bitumen use. Later, lime mortar was introduced, but bitumen's utility persisted for waterproofing even into Nebuchadnezzar's time.
So necessity truly was the mother of invention there, pushing them to innovate with local resources. And what about more complex architectural features like columns or arches? Did they have those?
Columns were generally subordinate in their architecture, not like in Egypt or Greece, but evidence exists from Tello, where cedarwood pillars rested on brick bases. Nippur revealed rectangular and oval brick columns. Warka even showed half columns used for facade decoration.
Okay, so present, but not dominant.
Right. But it's with arches and vaults that we see a truly Babylonian invention, born of necessity to bridge spaces without long timber beams.
This is a big one.
Huge. We find early examples in drains and aqueducts at Nippur, including T-shaped and segmental arches. Also at Tello and Khorsabad, used in drainage and city walls. At Ashur, burial vaults utilized arches. And Assyrian bas-reliefs even portrayed domed roofs.
So they really figured out the arch principle very early on.
They did. This widespread use speaks volumes about their early engineering prowess and their profound contribution to architectural history. Still fundamental today.
That's a crucial contribution. And of course, the iconic ziggurats, those massive stage towers that seem to touch the sky.
Yes, the multi-storied ziggurats were a defining feature, truly a marvel of ancient engineering and religious devotion. Urienger's ziggurat at Nippur, for example, had 3 stages.
And Nebuchadnezzar's in Babylon, the Tower of Babel inspiration.
That's the one, Itamen on Key, likely the inspiration. Herodotus described it as having 7 stages, reaching incredible heights. These massive structures were also intelligently drained by water conduits, showing a practical side to their grand designs.
Keeping the mud brick dry.
Essential. Interestingly, the ziggurat at El Hebo was a rare exception, being circular rather than the usual square or rectangular form.
And palaces.
Palaces, like Nebuchadnezzar's at Babylon, were sprawling complexes. Many rooms arranged around courtyards, often rebuilt with burnt brick for durability. Sargon's palace at Khorsabad had massive revetment walls and ingeniously used clay vaulting for roofs due to the scarcity of wood, again demonstrating their adaptability.
From these colossal structures, let's move to sculpture. Given the challenges of carving hard stone, Hancock notes the prevalence of bas-reliefs over sculpture in the round.
This is a key point. Working with imported hard stones like diorite was difficult, and local stone wasn't ideal. So, relief carving on softer stone slabs, often lining palace walls, became a major art form.
Makes sense.
Early Sumerian sculpture, as seen in the vulture stele of Eannatum, illustrates military operations with figures characterized by those large almond-shaped eyes and the aquiline nose. It gives them a distinct, almost stylized appearance.
You can recognize that style.
Definitely. Mesalim's mace head shows a procession of lions and the powerful lion-headed eagle of Lagash, combining animal motifs with mythology. Votive figures, like statues of Urnina.
Dedicated in temples.
Exactly. They depict individuals with clasped hands, short skirts, prominent noses, large lozenge-shaped eyes, often with shaved heads for sacerdotal figures, reflecting religious practices.
And then, during the Akkadian period, art seems to have truly flourished, reaching a climax in human figure reproduction, as Hancock puts it.
That's right. The stele of Victory of Naram Sin is the prime example here. It conveys immense dynamism and vitality.
What does it show?
It shows the king ascending a mountain, trampling enemies, with his victorious warriors following. They're armed with spears and bows, and Naram Sin wears this horn helmet that denotes divinity or power.
So much more action and realism.
Yes. Hancock contrasts this work's naturalism and energy with the lifeless conventionalism of older and even some later periods. He saw it as unique in its artistic sophistication.
The Assyrians, too, made their distinctive mark with their later bas-reliefs, famously adorning their palace walls. We've all seen images of those.
Indeed. Ashur-Nasir-Pal's reliefs depict battlefields and hunts, storming cities with battering rams, triumphant lion hunts, scenes of receiving submission from conquered peoples, crossing rivers.
All about projecting power.
Absolutely. Sennacherib's work is even more complex and scenic, showing, for example, the intricate transport of colossal bulls on sledges, or the detailed siege of Lachish.
Like giant narrative panels.
Exactly. But for true artistic masterpieces, particularly an animal representation, we look to Ashurbanipal.
The famous lion hunts again.
Those are the ones.
Yeah.
As described by Hancock, they show intense realism and delicacy in the handling, intuition into all those infinite subtleties and varying nuances which are the hallmark of life.
Wow, high praise.
They capture a visceral reality, the agony of the dying lions, the tension of the hunt, an emotional depth that was really unparalleled in their time.
So those famous reliefs in the British Museum, those are the ones. And while bas-reliefs were dominant, there was some sculpture in the round, right? Freestanding statues.
Yes, though limited compared to reliefs. Examples include a formidable seated figure of Shalmaneser II in black basalt, and the massive Nebo statues found at Nimrud,
And the palace guardians.
and of course those monumental winged human-headed bulls and lions, the Shidi and Lamasi guarding palace entrances, which we discussed earlier.
With their ingenious fifth leg.
With their fifth leg, exactly, to create that sense of completeness from any viewpoint. These figures embody the protective and awe-inspiring power of the Assyrian state.
That's a perfect example of their artistic problem solving, even on a monumental scale. Okay, let's talk about one of Mesopotamia's most significant and, frankly, enduring contributions. Cuneiform writing.
Ah, yes, cuneiform. Truly foundational to human history.
It really is. Who did it start?
It has a fascinating history, starting from a pictorial origin. Early symbols represented objects and ideas like a picture of a head meant head, or a picture of grain meant grain, simple pictograms.
Okay, makes sense. How did it get wedge-shaped?
Over time, these evolved into the characteristic wedge-shaped form that gives cuneiform its name. Cuneus is Latin for wedge. This transition was partly influenced by the materials.
Like a clay.
Exactly. Using a stylus, probably cut from reed, pressed into damp clay. Well, it naturally produced those distinctive wedge-shaped impressions more easily and quickly than drawing curves.
Efficiency wins out.
Pretty much. The symbols became more abstract, representing sounds as well as ideas.
And the materials they used for writing varied quite a bit, didn't they? Not just clay.
They did. Clay tablets were the most common, of course. And they came in a surprising variety of shapes and sizes. Small rectangles for notes, round tablets, big multi-sided prisms, or barrel-shaped cylinders for official records.
Wow.
But for durability, especially for royal inscriptions meant to last, they used harder volcanic rocks like diorite and basalt, and rarer, more precious materials like lapis lazuli for special dedicatory tablets.
Lapis lazuli tablets.
Imagine. It's worth noting, Hancock points out, that the earliest decipherers had no specific knowledge of its pictographic origin, as most inscriptions found showed the later, stereotyped wedge-shaped forms. They were starting from the complex end.
That brings us to the incredible journey of decipherment. How did scholars unravel these cryptic signs, turning what looked like random wedges into meaningful language?
Oh, it was a monumental effort, a true testament to human intellect and perseverance, spanning decades, even centuries if you count early attempts. Early travelers copied inscriptions, but the real breakthrough came with Jorg Grotefend.
In the early 19th century.
Yes. He focused on Achaemenian kings' names from trilingual inscriptions found at Persepolis inscriptions in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian cuneiform.
Trilingual was key.
Absolutely. He observed repeating groups of signs and deduced they were proper names in genealogical relation, like Xerxes, son of Darius, the king. He correctly inferred the pattern and identified some key sounds.
Amazing deduction.
Then the famous Behistun inscription, a massive trilingual relief carved high on a cliff face by Darius the Great,
Huh.
that was instrumental. Henry Rawlinson, a British army officer, risked life and limb to copy it.
Climb the cliff?
He did, and made significant progress translating the Old Persian part. Then, building on Rawlinson's work, scholars like Julius Oppert and others, by the mid-19th century, conclusively proved Assyrian, a dialect of Akkadian, the main Semitic language written in cuneiform, was a Semitic language. That unlocked the floodgates of understanding.
So it was like a giant linguistic puzzle, with different scholars contributing crucial pieces until the whole picture finally emerged. And once deciphered, what did the vast body of cuneiform literature reveal? The scope must have been huge.
Its breadth is just astounding. Hancock describes cuneiform literature as covering virtually every aspect of life and thought.
Like what?
Astrology, astronomy, history, mythology, the Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance, magic, medicine, mathematics, prayers, hymns, lists of gods, omens, even early dictionaries, lexicography, and grammar.
Wow, everything.
And many texts, thankfully, were copies of older Babylonian literature, meticulously preserved by scribes in royal archives like Ashurbanipal's famous library at Nineveh.
That library was crucial.
Absolutely. Bilingual texts also existed, Sumerian and Akkadian side by side, which further aided understanding for modern scholars.
This wasn't just ancient poetry or religious text, though, was it? Cuneiform also served very practical functions in daily life. It shaped their whole world.
Absolutely fundamental. Cuneiform wasn't just a writing system, it was, the ultimate information technology of its age.
Good way to put it.
It allowed Mesopotamia to scale society in unprecedented ways. It enabled everything from the vast bureaucracy of empires to the codification of laws, like Hammurabi's Code, complex trade, the preservation of epics.
It was the engine of complexity itself.
Exactly. It was used for royal annals, like those of Tiglath-Pileser I, detailing his military campaigns and building projects. Crucial for business archives, those Marashu Sun's records in Nippur document their extensive banking and brokerage activities.
So contracts, too.
Definitely. Contracts were written on clay, sometimes protected by case tablets, basically. Clay envelopes that had to be broken to reveal the original contract inside.
A security measure.
You got it. Royal correspondence, like Hammurabi's letters, addressed everything from irrigation instructions to sheep shearing schedules. Scribes used syllabaries for training. They even used clay models of ox hooves and sheep's livers for forecasts, divination texts.
Forecasting from livers. Okay.
Yes, patoscopy. The omnipresence of writing, from grand histories to mundane transactions and living predictions, truly underscores its foundational role in Mesopotamian civilization.
Beyond the monumental impact of the written word, we also see Mesopotamia's advanced capabilities reflected in their mastery of metalwork. Metallurgy.
They showed considerable proficiency, particularly given the early period. Copper was used very early, even in the pre-cuneiform period, before widespread writing.
Wow, that early.
Bronze followed, of course, the alloy of copper and tin, used for practical items like scimitars, tools, but also for highly decorative things like those lion weights, some even inscribed with Phoenician, showing trade connections.
Right.
They created beautiful, highly decorated bronze dishes, sometimes showing distinct Egyptian influence, again pointing to interaction between these cultures.
What about precious metals?
Gold was used for decorative purposes. Hancock mentions a Naram-Sin strip, possibly from a statue or furniture. And Nebuchadnezzar used gold extensively for temple decorations in Babylon. Silver was also used for idols and door coverings.
Any other metal?
Lead appeared as an alloy, or sometimes in things like gate sockets, providing a durable pivot point. Iron appeared later than bronze.
Stone of heaven.
That's what they sometimes called it, yes, possibly referring to meteoric iron initially.
Yeah.
It was used for spears, daggers, chains, even bells later on. They used sophisticated techniques like casting in molds and hammering. Votive copper statuettes often had these nail point bases.
Why nail points?
To fix them securely in the ground or into temple walls as offerings. Practical design.
It's clear there were skilled artisans across various materials. What about other, perhaps less obvious forms of artistry? Painting, for instance. Was it painting as we understand it today?
Not really in the modern sense, like frescoes or canvas painting aiming for realism. However, Hancock stresses that both Babylonians and Assyrians loved gay colors, bright colors.
Okay.
And they used them extensively for objects and architectural decoration. A fantastic example is the colored clay reliefs, like the Babylonian lion frieze on the Procession Street of Marduk in Babylon.
The famous blue brick lions.
That's the one. Lions with bold yellow stripes and white rosettes on this vibrant dark blue glazed brick background. Stunning. The famous Ishtar Gate also displayed bulls and dragons in relief, rendered in brilliant enameled bricks.
So color was applied through the bricks themselves.
Often, yes, using glazes. Enameled bricks were also used in Assyria, for instance, at Sargon's Khorsabad Palace, showing winged figures on arches. Walls in Nippur were sometimes stuccoed and painted directly. And at Erech, they found cone walls.
Cone walls?
Yeah, walls decorated by pressing thousands of small clay cones with painted ends in red or black into the wet plaster to create intricate geometrical patterns. Very distinctive.
That sounds incredibly labor-intensive. And their cylinder seals are legendary. Small, but incredibly detailed. They acted almost like signatures, right? And mini narratives.
They are fantastic, yes. Cylinder seals were crucial, used as marks of ownership for sealing contracts or documents. Rolling the seal across the wet clay left a unique impression.
Like a personal logo.
Exactly. And they were often worn as amulets, too, made from materials like marble, shell, lapis lazuli, serpentine. They depict a wide array of scenes. Mythology, like the Epic of Gilgamesh or Etana's flight to heaven on the eagle. Religious scenes, too, gods drinking through tubes from a central vessel. The sun god Shamash emerging from mountains or sailing in his bark. Heroic feats, like figures wrestling lions and various animals.
Whole world in miniature.
Precisely. And they show a clear evolution of artistic style, from quite crude early examples to highly conventionalized and sophisticated designs later on. These tiny objects are invaluable windows into their cosmology, beliefs, and daily concerns.
Fascinating. What other everyday items or crafts give us a glimpse into their lives? Shell. Ivory.
Shell engraving was practiced early by the Sumerians, often with intricate designs inlaid into objects. Ivory work, particularly panels found at Nimrud, often showed strong Egyptian influence.
Egyptian influence in Assyria.
Yes, quite clearly sometimes. Cartouches bearing Egyptian hieroglyphs, emblems of the Egyptian goddess Mot, suggests trade, tribute, or shared artisans maybe. However, some ivory panels from Nimrud were distinctly Assyrian in style, depicting powerful, four-winged mythological beings.
Okay. And pottery. Always important in archaeology.
Absolutely. Pottery and stoneware were diverse. Various shapes. Hancock mentions bell-shaped and boat-shaped vases. Decoration included rope patterns, geometrical designs. They also used stone vases made of marble, sandstone, alabaster.
What for?
Practical items like lamps, drinking cups, oil jars, and even toilet requisites, small containers where traces of henna and kohl, eye makeup have been found inside.
Makeup pots from ancient Mesopotamia.
Yeah. Hancock even mentions a small glass vase belonging to King Sargon as a rare early example of glass from the period. Glassmaking wasn't common then. The sheer range and sophistication of their craftsmanship, from monumental architecture down to these small personal items, truly bring their daily lives into vivid focus.
So with all these incredible artifacts unearthed, we can start to piece together a vibrant picture of Mesopotamian life and culture. Let's explore the daily rhythms from their clothing and military might to their economic endeavors and the very foundations of their law and religion.
It's quite remarkable, the sheer infinitude of activities and pursuits that Hancock observes. It makes their world feel surprisingly rich and complex.
Let's start with basics. What do they wear?
When it comes to dress and adornment, early Sumerians wore simple wool skirts, often fringed. Later, these became elaborately flounced and pleated for high-ranking individuals. Sometimes an upper garment would cover the left shoulder. Their art gives us a clear sense of these distinct styles.
Simple but practical. And for the Assyrians, it sounds like their attire became much more elaborate, reflecting their imperial power.
Indeed. Assyrian kings, like Ashur-nasir-pal and Sennacherib, shown in their reliefs, wore magnificent ceremonial robes, richly decorated to emphasize their status. Intricate patterns, embroidery.
And headgear.
Soldiers often wore conical helmets, sometimes with ear flaps. Kings sported towering tiaras, tall cylindrical hats, often depicted in red, white, and yellow. Hancock suggests this possibly represented gold braid, signifying royalty and maybe even divinity.
And jewelry.
Jewelry was prominent. Armlets, bracelets, often with a rosette motif, which was very common. Elaborate necklaces and earrings with varied drops. Hancock even notes seeing a Maltese cross-like ornament worn by a king on a relief. This attention to detail in their adornment certainly reflected social status and grandeur.
Moving from dress to their military might, how did they project power across the region? What were their key weapons and tactics?
The primary weapon seems to have been the long lance or spear. They also used axes, darts, clubs, or maces, and curved weapons, possibly scimitars, though the exact type is debated. Early blades were made of flint or obsidian before metal became widespread.
And the soldiers themselves?
Typically foot archers, spearmen, and swordsmen, often protected by small, round, or rectangular hand shields. A crucial innovation was the coat of mail.
Chainmail.
Or scale mail, yes. Introduced for bowmen by Shalmaneser II, offering much better protection. And by Sennacherib's time, cavalry units were heavily armed with mail coats, becoming a powerful shock force.
And the iconic chariots, central to so many ancient armies. We see them all the time in reliefs.
Absolutely central to their military strategy, especially for the elite. They were drawn by either 2 or 3 horses.
Why 3?
The third often seems to have been a relief animal, an outrigger, maybe providing extra power or serving as a spare if one of the main 2 was injured.
Practical.
Hancock notes 2 main types of chariot, an early version that was low, light, with small 6-spoked wheels, and a later, more capacious and loftier design with 8-spoked wheels about 5 feet in diameter. This offered a good vantage ground for warriors, a stable platform for archers or spearmen.
Mobile fighting platforms. Did
Yeah.
they have naval power too?
Yes, especially Sennacherib. He employed biremes war galleys with 2 banks of oars and an upper deck for warriors. His reliefs show them with curved prows and sterns, some even decorated with horse heads, used for naval pursuits perhaps in the marshes or rivers, demonstrating their versatility in warfare.
So they were formidable on both land and sea. This highly organized society, teeming with life and military power, must have had an incredibly robust economic life to sustain it all. Agriculture was key, right?
Absolutely. The incredible fertility of the soil, once properly irrigated, meant agriculture was paramount. They cultivated cereals like corn, meaning grain in general, like wheat or barley, along with fruit trees, especially the date palm, as we mentioned.
On vegetables.
A wide variety: leek, onion, garlic, lettuce, coriander, hyssop, turnip, cabbage, radish. Land ownership varied. There were royal domains, large estates owned by private individuals, and also evidence of small ownership, individual farmers.
And irrigation laws were strict.
Had to be. Hancock calls them stringent. It was a necessity in their environment. And wages for laborers, along with the higher price of oxen and wagons, were fixed by law, indicating a regulated economy.
They weren't just farmers, though. Hancock explicitly states they were a great commercial people, deeply engaged in trade.
Indeed. Shipping was an important trade, with specific laws governing shipbuilders and boatmen, highlighting its economic significance. Business was often conducted by agents. Sort of, yeah. Working on commission or profit-sharing arrangements. If an agent lost goods due to unforeseen circumstances, they might have to swear an oath to that effect. Partnerships were recognized legally.
What about finance? Money lending.
Oh, yes. Lending money, property sales requiring meticulously written transactions on clay tablets, and the practice of pledges.
Pledging what?
Servants, wives, or children could be pledged as collateral for debts, though Hammurabi's code limited this kind of debt servitude to 3 years.
Wow, that's harsh by our standards.
It is. But there were also strict laws against illegal distraint. Seizing goods without consent was penalized. It shows a commitment to commercial justice, even within a system that allowed debt bondage. They also had standardized systems for weights and measures, square area measure, capacity, and weight essential for fair trade.
All of these complex interactions point directly to one of Mesopotamia's most enduring legacies, the Code of Hammurabi. This is a monument to ancient law and order, something many people have heard of.
It is, and what's truly profound here is how Hancock highlights that Hammurabi's code, dating back some 4,000 years ago, enshrined many of those principles of justice and mercy which we are apt to regard as the peculiar offspring of our own enlightened age.
Really, justice and mercy. We tend to focus on the harsh parts.
Well, it aimed for order and fairness within its context. Its influence on subsequent legal systems, including those that would eventually shape Western law, cannot be overstated. It represents an early, incredibly sophisticated attempt to create a just and orderly society through written law, applicable to everyone, though punishments varied by social class.
And it contains some remarkably specific and frankly quite brutal provisions that certainly grab your attention.
It certainly did. The famous lex talionis, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth principle, was clearly stated, reflecting a retributive justice system, at least between social equals.
What are some other examples Hancock mentions?
Well, get this. If an adopted child was insolent to their foster parents, their tongue could be removed. An adopted son inquiring too persistently about his birth parents could have an eye plucked out.
Good grief.
And perhaps most startling, the one about surgeons. If a surgeon caused a patient's death or loss of an eye through carelessness or lack of skill,
What happened?
their hands would be amputated.
Whoa! Talk about medical malpractice insurance.
Right. A law that Hancock dryly suggests considerably cooled the ardor of surgeons. It definitely implies a high standard of professional accountability, to put it mildly.
That's one way to put it. What about family law and other social offenses?
Marriage laws were detailed. A formal contract was required between the suitor and the bride's father. It involved a bride price paid by the suitor, and usually a dowry given by the father to his daughter.
And the dowry.
It often exceeded the bride price and was legally the wife's property. She retained it in a divorce unless she was found guilty of gross misconduct. Landlord-tenant relations were also codified, with rents often paid in produce. Penalties for embezzlement or negligence could be severe.
Like being torn apart by oxen.
Yeah, that penalty was prescribed if a tenant's negligence led to the death of the owner's livestock they were caring for. Striking a superior in rank could lead to public scourging 60 strokes with a cowhide whip. Incest was punished by banishment.
How is justice administered?
The judicial system involved a bench of judges for important cases and single judges for minor suits. Pleas had to be presented as written affidavits, indicating a formalized legal process reliant on that cuneiform writing we discussed.
So a highly developed legal framework for its time, shaping everything from commerce to family life, and weaving through all aspects of Mesopotamian society was religion. How did they relate to their complex pantheon of gods and their conception of the afterlife?
Religion was absolutely central. In Babylonian religion, particularly around Hammurabi's time, the god Marduk achieved a unique position.
Why, Mark?
His rise mirrored Babylon's rise as the capital city. Political power and divine power often went hand in hand. Older gods like Anu, sky god, Bel, or Enlil, earth storm god, Ea, water wisdom god, Nergal, underworld god, Adad, storm god, Shamash, sun god, Sin, moon god, Nana, and Ishtar, goddess of love and war, were still venerated.
A big pantheon.
Huge. But they often became subordinate to Marduk in the official state cult. There was even what Hancock calls a monotheistic tendency developing around Marduk, attributing creation to him in the Babylonian creation epic Enuma Elish.
But they didn't ditch the old gods.
No, and this is clever. There was also a syncretic process identifying older gods with Marduk or aspects of Marduk, perhaps to preserve traditions and avoid alienating diverse populations within the empire. The sun god Shamash, for instance, remained critically important, particularly for agriculture, and as a god of justice, Hammurabi receives his laws from Shamash on the famous stele.
And the Assyrian religion, was it distinct or did it build upon Babylonian foundations?
It was largely Babylonian in origin. They adopted much of the pantheon and mythology. But in Assyria, Ashur, the original city god of Ashur, became the supreme national god.
A reflection of Assyrian identity.
Exactly. Ashur gained prominence, becoming a warrior god reflecting Assyria's imperial ambitions. However, Marduk's influence still endured, sometimes causing political friction between Assyria and Babylon. Ishtar, the goddess of both war and love, was hugely important in Assyria too, second only to Ashur himself in importance. Her name almost became a synonym for goddess, embodying both fierce power and fertility.
What was the role of the temples in society? Were they solely places of worship, or more?
Oh, far more. Temples were incredibly powerful and financially robust institutions. They owned vast herds of cattle and sheep, large tracts of land. Their administration, as Hancock notes, actually caused Hammurabi considerable anxiety, indicating their independent economic and political power.
So priests were powerful figures.
Very. Priests and various laymen served in the temples, earning what Hancock calls exorbitant hire for their duties. Service privileges the rights to perform certain rituals or receive certain incomes from the temple or valuable assets.
Like owning shares.
Almost. They could be bought, sold, or mortgaged and were often hereditary. Temples also engaged in money lending, acting like banks. They were deeply integrated into the economic fabric of society, acting as centers of both spiritual and material wealth.
And their conception of the afterlife, you mentioned it was quite bleak.
It was largely a gloomy one, yeah. The next world was conceived as Aralu, Shualu, or sometimes Ikor, mountain house, interestingly echoing that possible Sumerian origin. It was depicted as a hollow or cave underneath the earth, basically a house of darkness.
Not appealing.
Not at all. The dead were described as being clothed in feathers like birds, subsisting eternally on dust and clay. A truly pitiable existence.
Was there any hope?
There was a belief that the living could mitigate the dead's lot, somewhat, through decent burial rituals and regular offerings of food and drink at the tomb. An unburied or neglected dead person could become an ikmu, a restless spirit or demon that could return to haunt the living.
So proper burial was crucial.
Very. The deification of certain ancestors, particularly kings, was a short step from this belief, offering a more positive, albeit exclusive, path for some after death.
Finally, what were some of the key religious symbols they used? These often appear on those cylinder seals and boundary stones, right?
That's right. They are the chief sources for understanding their rich visual symbolism. The crescent moon clearly symbolized the moon god Sin. The star, often an 8-pointed star, represented Ishtar. The thunderbolt or forked lightning was for Adad, the storm god.
And the winged disc.
The winged disc often represented Ashur in Assyria, or perhaps earlier the sun god Shamash. It signified supreme divine power and protection. Horned hats or helmets were a clear marker of divinity, worn by major gods like Ashur, Anu, and Bel.
Any symbols for other specific gods?
Yes, a column topped with a ram's head symbolized Ea, the god of wisdom and freshwater. One with a spade or maru on top often symbolized Marduk. A column with lion or bull heads might represent Ninib, Ninurta, a warrior god. The seven dots, or Pleiades constellation, often represented the Sabiti, a group of seven minor but powerful gods, sometimes associated with plague or warfare. This complex system provided a sophisticated visual language for their intricate pantheon and cosmology.
So we've explored Mesopotamia through Percy Hancock's 1912 lens, understanding the new material available to him then. A fascinating snapshot. But what about archaeology then versus now?
A crucial question.
How has our understanding evolved in the centuries since his book was published, and what does that tell us about the scientific process itself?
This is where we truly see the power of scientific progress in action. Hancock was working with what he called new material, and those initial discoveries by Layard, Botta, de Sarzeck, and others were absolutely revolutionary for their time. Groundbreaking stuff.
But methods were different then.
Very different. Hancock himself points to the inherent uncertainty of a date assigned to an object, based on the mere assumption that such object belongs to the stratum in which it has ultimately found itself, without other corroborative evidence.
Meaning they might just assume everything found at a certain depth was the same age.
Sometimes, yes, or worse, early excavators, often driven by the thrill of discovering monumental finds for museums back home. Well, they sometimes prioritized those colossal statues and tablets. They might have dug right through layers, potentially missing or mixing context, and perhaps undervalued something as seemingly mundane as pottery shards.
That sounds like a key limitation. Almost a treasure hunt mentality, maybe.
Ah.
How did modern archaeology address this, leading to more precise and nuanced understandings?
It shifted fundamentally towards a purely archaeological test, as Hancock calls the emerging approach even then. This depends upon a close examination of the style of art, the mode of writing, and crucially rigorous stratigraphic analysis carefully recording the layers, or strata, in which objects are found.
Context is king.
Exactly. For example, Hancock himself highlights how Nabonidus, the last Neo-Babylonian king, who was actually quite an antiquarian himself, incorrectly, dated the Akkadian king Naram-Sin to around 3750 BC. He found an inscription and took its claim at face value.
And that was wrong.
Significantly wrong. Later archaeological evidence, based on stratigraphy and comparative art styles, placed Naram-Sin much closer to Ur-Engur, around 2500 BC. They were perhaps a couple of centuries apart, not 1300 years, as Nabonidus believed, based on his flawed source.
So archaeology could correct ancient historical records.
Precisely. It demonstrates how later, more scientific excavation and stylistic analysis clarified ancient chronology, proving that even ancient historians could get their dates wrong, and archaeology could provide the correction.
What else changed in the appreciation of artifacts or interpretations of ancient practices?
Well, there was a growing appreciation for all artifacts, beyond just the colossal bulls, sculptured bas-reliefs, or even prosaic clay tablets.
Like the pottery you mentioned.
Exactly. Later scientific excavations, like those by the Germans, Kohlwey and André, at sites like Babylon and Asher, began to meticulously document and appreciate pottery sherds, small finds, architectural fragments, recognizing their immense value for dating layers accurately and understanding daily life. This was a significant shift from earlier practices where such items might have been overlooked or simply discarded.
Everything tells a story.
If you know how to read it. And even artistic interpretations evolved. For instance, the exaggerated complexity in Sennacherib's bas-reliefs, those packed battle scenes.
Yeah, they look incredibly busy.
They do. Later analysis recognized this less as a literal photographic depiction of reality, and more perhaps as a result of the artist's ignorance of perspective, or maybe just a convention to show the vast scale of events. It led to this dense, almost dizzying visual narrative, rather than simply reflecting the actual scene accurately from one viewpoint. It shows a more critical and nuanced approach to art historical analysis developing over time.
That's a fascinating reevaluation of artistic intent, not just what they showed, but how and why they showed it. And what about the interpretation of burial practices? Hancock also touches upon cremation.
Yes, he discusses the debate around cremation. Early finds of burnt human remains mixed with grave goods were sometimes taken as definitive evidence that the body itself was cremated within the tomb or grave.
Seems logical.
But later, more detailed scientific findings by Kohlwey, examining the pottery containing such remains, well, he found the pottery itself bore no trace of there having been in the fire.
Ah, so the pots weren't burnt.
Correct. This proved that the ashes were placed in the vessels after the body had been cremated elsewhere. This provided clear and incontrovertible evidence of the practice of cremation in Babylonia, but crucially, it also underscored the need for meticulous scientific examination to confirm initial assumptions, a critical lesson for any archaeological endeavor.
These insights really show how much our understanding has been refined over time, moving from initial groundbreaking discoveries to more detailed, scientifically validated conclusions. It's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. And Hancock's book captures that exciting foundational stage beautifully.
These insights show how much our understanding has been refined, but the core impact of Mesopotamia remains profound. So let's bring it home. What does this all mean for us today? Why does Mesopotamia still matter, and what is Hancock's enduring legacy?
Well, the profound influence of Mesopotamian civilization on our world simply cannot be overstated. It's foundational in so many ways.
Like writing.
Definitely writing. From cuneiform's pictorial origins to its complex literary forms, it laid the very foundation for all subsequent alphabets and the concept of literacy itself. Ashurbanipal's library, even though it was filled largely with copies of older texts, its very existence and the survival of those tablets was crucial in preserving ancient knowledge, myths, science, history for millennia. It forms a significant part of the bedrock of human intellectual history.
And in terms of how we govern ourselves and establish justice, the impact of these ancient societies is truly undeniable, isn't it?
Absolutely. The concept of organized city-states, the sophisticated legal framework of Hammurabi's code with its attempt, however flawed by our standards, to establish principles of justice and mercy and accountability, these influence subsequent legal systems for thousands of years.
Setting precedents.
Exactly. It showed humanity's early grasp of complex social organization and the need for codified law. These precedents echo, however faintly sometimes, in our own legal systems today.
And their urban planning and engineering innovations are equally remarkable, especially given the environmental challenges they face. We talked about the arches, the irrigation.
Indeed. Their mastery of brick architecture, the invention and widespread use of arches and vaults, their complex drainage and vast irrigation systems, these were absolutely essential for sustaining large populations in a difficult environment.
And incredibly advanced for their time.
Hugely. These innovations continue to inform modern infrastructure and city planning in fundamental ways. Basic engineering principles endure, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really a testament to the sheer human spirit, the persistence and ingenuity of these ancient peoples in overcoming environmental challenges, developing these complex societies, and expressing themselves through diverse and powerful art forms. They show us what's possible when humanity works together, innovates, and strives to create order and meaning.
That's a great point. And Hancock's book itself, published over a century ago, it's more than just a historical account. It's a legacy in itself, isn't it? Giving us this unique window.
It is. Hancock's Mesopotamian Archaeology is a testament to the scientific spirit of his age, capturing that moment of synthesis. His work diligently captures the infinitude of activities and pursuits, as he put it, that made up this civilization.
Bringing it all together.
Yes, compiling the new material available to him into a single, comprehensive volume. It provides a crucial baseline, a foundational text for all future scholarship. It allows us to understand not just Mesopotamia, but the very process of archaeological discovery as it stood at that pivotal moment. It shaped how we continue to explore and interpret our shared human story.
Okay, here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. The diligent work of excavators, from the pioneers Hancock describes to those working today with incredible new technologies, continues to reveal fragments of these distant cultures.
Always more to find.
As we delve into such ancient histories, we're not just looking at the past, we're witnessing the genesis of concepts that define our present. It reminds us that knowledge is a continuous, evolving journey.
So here's the question. What other ancient discoveries, maybe yet unearthed, or perhaps sitting in a museum storeroom waiting to be reinterpreted with fresh eyes or new tech, might redefine our understanding of where we came from, and maybe even where we're going? Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey to the cradle of civilization. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive.